Greetings ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mangs and I welcome you guys back to yet another Fire Emblem character spotlights. This one in particular is done to celebrate the channel reaching 3,000 subscribers, and is probably my most requested spotlight yet. I'm sorry for taking so long to produce it, but I felt like I had to do this character justice. Today we are taking a look at my most favorite benchwarmer, the brilliant but rude mage, Soren. Now, before we get started, I would just like to say that this particular spotlight will feature heavy Radiant Dawn spoilers. If you still haven't played the game yet, you probably should not be watching this spotlight at all. Soren is a young mage and Ike's best friend. He is also the trusted tactician of Greil's Mercenaries. He is branded, meaning he possesses the blood of both beorc and laguz, his laguz heritage being draconic in nature. Understanding Soren's backstory requires reading his support conversations and unlocking many hidden objectives in the game. It is revealed that Soren was not raised by his parents, but by an unknown woman. When he was just 4 years old, a sage adopted him as his apprentice, mistaking Soren for a spirit charmer due to his branded mark on his forehead. A spirit charmer being a mage that has invited a spirit to live inside his body, and often receiving a similar mark to that of branded people. This sage taught Soren how to wield magic, but he was already old, and he died not many years after adopting him. With his master dead, Soren was left alone, forced to fend for himself. He tried to approach both beorc and laguz settlements, but he was shunned by both sides due to his branded nature. He also found that he was unable to speak, as the sage had only taught him how to wield magic, making him unable to communicate with others. Unable to find food or shelter, Soren was starving and on the brink of death. That's when he was approached by a young Ike, who gave him food and promised to return the next day to give him more. However, Ike did not return on the following day. Instead, Soren discovered the rampage caused by Ike's father Greil, who had touched Laeron's medallion and gone insane. Soren searched the bodies of the fallen, and when he did not find Ike anywhere, he assumed he was still alive, and traveled to Crimea to find him. In Crimea, Soren took refuge in a church under the guise of a spirit charmer. There he was taken care of by the local residents, who taught him how to speak. After several years of searching in Crimea, Soren finally met up with Ike, and joined the Greil Mercenaries in order to be with his newfound friend. Soren would follow Ike on his journey as his friend and advisor, and would never stray from his side no matter what, his loyalty never wavering. Towards the end of Radiant Dawn, it is revealed through a special conversation that Soren, not Peleus, is the child of Almeda, which also makes him the son of the Mad King Ashnard. He is never told this, at least not in the events of the game. Soren's appearance is that of a young short boy. He has dark green hair and light red eyes, and dresses himself in a dark grey robe. He is very short for his age, but this probably stems from his branded blood, which causes him to age slower than regular beorc. In Radiant Dawn, his appearance haven't changed much, again probably due to his branded nature, but he has changed his garments to a slightly lighter color. Soren's personality can be described as rude, cold, and calculated, but there's more to him than being a simple douchebag. Ike says this is a ruse he puts on to fool people, and that he actually is both compassionate and rather soft-hearted, though Ike seems to be the only person who ever gets to see this side of him. Soren is also highly intelligent, and he has a great mind for strategy. He is constantly able to come up with great plans and ideas on the spot. It is undoubtedly his cunning mind that led the Greil Mercenaries to victory in their many conflicts. Soren also shows great disdain for laguz, and is outright hostile towards them. Despite being treated coldly by both beorc and laguz as a child, he remembered the laguz as being the most cruel, and thus have absolutely no respect for them whatsoever. This changes slightly in Radiant Dawn, where he seems to have gained some degree of tolerance for them, going as far as to stop addressing them as subhumans. Aside from that, Soren's personality changes little between the two games. He comes across as a little bit more mature in Radiant Dawn, but he's still the same guy for the most part. Though, in a secret conversation unlocked at the end of the game, Soren, after explaining his past to Ike, breaks down in tears and hugs him. As units, we have to talk about Soren in both of the games he appears in. In Path of Radiance, he starts out as a low-level mage that joins in the 3rd chapter, meaning his availability is very good. His base stats are low, but you have ample time to train him up on the weaker enemies in the early game. He specializes in wind magic and joins with a wind tome, but he can still use both fire and thunder magic, albeit at a much lower weapon rank. Wind magic is very weak, but also extremely light, allowing Soren to start doubling enemies frequently once he gets a few points of speed. Soren can best be described as a glass cannon, with high magic but low luck and defense, meaning he should not be standing on the front lines against tough physical opponents. His resistance, on the other hand, is very good, making him a good magical wall. Soren's growth rates are pretty balanced, aside from his defense and luck, which are on the low side. His magic, skill and resistance growths, on the other hand, are fantastic, and he will most likely cap out these stats towards the end of the game. Soren comes with the Adept skill, which allows him to attack twice, or possibly up to even 4 times in a single round of combat if he would normally double an enemy. Strangely enough, Adept's activation chance in Path of Radiance is not dependent on speed, but rather skill, which is quite useful considering Soren has a 55% growth in the stats. His promotion to Sage allows him to wield staves, which makes him an excellent support unit. He can also up to wield knives, but this is considered a terrible choice as his strength growth of 5% combined with the fact that knives are terrible in Path of Radiance will make him unable to utilize them to any good effects. Soren has a 5% bond support with Ike, but only 2 available supports otherwise, the one being with Ike and the other one being with Stefan. His Dark Affinity can come in handy as it boosts both damage and evasion. Pairing him up with Ike and obtaining an A support can make the early to mid game considerably easier, and it is also recommended as it unlocks a bonus conversation if your save file is transferred over to Radiant Dawn. Overall, Soren is probably one of the game's best mages considering his early join time and respectable growths. I personally opted to go for Ileana instead as I'm a sucker for miniskirts and boots, but I can totally understand why people would consider Soren the best choice. In Radiant Dawn, Soren does not join until the Greil Mercenaries show up much later in the game, but comes as a pre-promoted sage with very solid base stats, though he doesn't get his staff utility back until he promotes to his 3rd tier class. His magic and skill is very good, and his speed is decent, though he lacks a few points to consistently start doubling enemies fought in the chapter he's in. He still acts very much as a glass cannon, with very good offensive stats, but extremely low durability in the form of low hit points, luck and defense, meaning that he should, again, be kept away from the front lines, preferably behind Ike, as they still have their bond support in this game. Soren's growth rates have also been drastically increased, but this is mostly due to Radiant Dawn's growth inflation that affects most of the playable characters. Strangely enough, however, his speed has taken a massive hit, and he's quite slow compared to the other magic users in the game at only 35%. This can be problematic as he can easily get speed screwed and have trouble consistently doubling enemies. This is easily fixed, however, by abusing bonus experience, by capping his strongest stats early and using it to boost his speed. Soren still possesses his Adept skill, which now procs on speed rather than skill, but seeing as you can move skills around as you please in this game, you can either keep it on him or move it over to another unit that benefits more from it, like a Swordmaster. Upon his promotion to Archsage, he gets his staff utility back, as well as the flare skill, which gives him a little more survivability in the form of self-heals, though it's still not reliable enough to keep him safe on the front lines. Many consider Soren to be the best mage user in Radiant Dawn, due to his insanely high base stats and competent growths, and I am inclined to agree, particularly since you can fix most of his issues simply by abusing the bonus experience system. Thank you for watching this Fire Emblem character spotlights. Let me know who you want featured in the next episode by telling me in the comments section. If you would be so kind as to give this video a like, that also helps out my channel a ton, and if you hit the subscribe button, you'll be automatically notified when the next video is released. At any rate, my name's been Mangs, and I'll see you guys next time.